Welcome to Book Summary Podcast, your gateway to personal transformation. Each episode delivers big ideas from the world's most impactful books on mindset, productivity, and success, all in just a few minutes. Ready to turn knowledge into action? Let's get started.
What if getting just 1% better in anything, whether it's your health, your finances, or your relationships, could actually lead to truly extraordinary, almost unbelievable results over time? Think about it. We all make these small, seemingly insignificant choices every single day, right? Often completely on autopilot.
Yeah, we do.
But what if those tiny, often overlooked actions, they're compounded? What if they held the absolute key to transforming your entire life?
It's a really compelling idea, isn't it? And almost counterintuitive.
Right.
The idea that profound, lasting change doesn't demand these radical overhauls or like monumental willpower, but instead it just needs a consistent commitment to, well, minuscule adjustments.
Exactly. And that's precisely the fascinating world we're deep diving into today. We're exploring the transformative, practical ideas from James Clear in his massive bestseller, Atomic Habits.
That's right. And our mission here in this deep dive is really to unpack the core principles and honestly some surprising insights that Clear reveals.
We're not just summarizing here. We want to give you a practical operating manual, something you can use to build powerful, almost effortless systems for change.
Our goal is to show you how these minuscule adjustments, when you apply them consistently, can truly unlock life-altering outcomes.
Yeah, genuinely transforming you into the person you really want to become.
And what's so remarkable about Clear's work, I think, is that it's far from just abstract theory. He pulls together cutting-edge psychology and neuroscience with these incredibly inspiring real-world stories.
Oh, yeah, the stories are great.
Right. From Olympic gold medalists, leading CEOs, distinguished scientists, and even his own very personal and pretty surprising journey of recovery and self-improvement.
It's this unique blend, isn't it? The best ideas, but for real-world application. He throws in surprising facts, even a bit of humor. It keeps you hooked.
He really does. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. Let's start with the foundation of his whole philosophy. This surprising, almost explosive power of tiny habits. When he talks about atomic habits, what exactly does he mean by that? What makes them atomic?
That's a great question. Clear uses atomic very deliberately, playing on its double meaning.
Okay.
First, it refers to something extremely small, right? The irreducible fundamental unit of a larger system, like an actual atom.
The building block.
The building block. And second, this is crucial, it refers to a source of immense energy or power.
Ah, okay, like atomic energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So an atomic habit is this tiny fundamental building block of behavior that, when you combine it with others, becomes a source of remarkable, almost explosive results.
So it's not just any small habit.
No, a habit on its own is just a routine and automatic response.
Yeah.
The insight here is that the smallest building blocks, when you apply them strategically, contain this immense potential for change.
And that potential comes from what he calls the compound effect, right? This is where it gets really interesting for me. He argues that if you just make a tiny 1% improvement every single day, by the end of the year, you won't just be slightly better.
Nope.
You'll actually be a staggering 37 times better.
It's incredible when you see the math.
It really is. It's like compound interest, but for self-improvement. Those small daily gains just accumulate exponentially over time. They become this powerful ally, not just some fleeting effort.
And a perfect example of this aggregation of marginal gains, as he puts it, is the absolutely astonishing turnaround of British professional cycling.
Oh, this story is wild.
It really is. Before 2003, their history was, well, dismal.
Understatement.
Yeah. Since 1908, British riders had managed just one single Olympic gold medal.
Wow.
They had never won the Tour de France in 110 years. Their performance was so poor that a major European bike manufacturer actually refused to sell them bikes.
They refused. Why?
They were afraid it would hurt their brand if other cyclists saw the Brits using their gear. That's how bad it was.
That's brutal. But then came Dave Brailsford, hired as a performance director in 2003.
Right. And his philosophy was simple but revolutionary: the aggregation of marginal gains. He believed in searching for just a tiny 1% margin of improvement in absolutely everything they did.
Everything. Like what?
I mean, everything. No detail was too small. They looked at adjusting the bike seat for optimal power output, using different massage gels to speed up muscle recovery.
Yeah, okay.
They even repainted the inside of the team truck white
Why white?
so they could spot even the tiniest bit of dust and ensure pristine cleanliness, which they thought could affect bike mechanics or even rider health. Brailsford and his team systematically looked for every single element, no matter how small, that could be improved by just 1%.
1% everywhere. And the results?
Nothing short of extraordinary.
Yeah.
Within just a decade, say, from 2007 to 2017, British cyclists went from being, frankly, a joke
Yeah.
to winning 178 world championships,
Whoa.
securing 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals, and maybe most famously, capturing 5 Tour de France victories with riders like Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome.
It's widely seen as the most successful run in cycling history, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it perfectly illustrates how these small, almost insignificant changes, when applied consistently, just accumulated into world-class, almost unbelievable performance.
So the big takeaway here is that massive results aren't just for people with extraordinary talent. They're the product of these consistent small advantages adding up.
Exactly. And this concept isn't just for elite athletes or big teams. Clear grounds his entire philosophy in a very personal, very vivid story from his own life. It really shows how anyone can apply these principles.
Yeah, his story is intense. He talks about this really traumatic accident he had final day of his sophomore year of high school.
That's the one. He was hit directly in the face with a baseball bat swung by a classmate.
Woof.
The impact was incredibly severe. He crushed his nose, fractured his skull multiple times, shattered both eye sockets, his brain swelled, he lost consciousness, had seizures. He was even put into a medically induced coma.
It sounds absolutely horrifying. Just reading about it is difficult.
It must have been.
Mm-hmm.
And the physical recovery was incredibly hard, too. He actually recounts opening his eyes at one point and having his eyeball literally bulge out of its socket because of the pressure.
Oh, my God.
He had double vision for weeks, couldn't drive for 8 months, had to go through painstaking physical therapy just to relearn basic motor patterns. And the psychological toll, as you can imagine, was immense. He felt depressed, completely overwhelmed.
And then, adding insult to injury, the humiliation of returning to baseball a year later, a sport that was clearly his lifeblood, only to be cut from the varsity team and sent down to junior varsity. He remembers just sitting in his car, crying.
Yeah. But that low point, that moment of real self-doubt, actually became a turning point for him. When he started college at Denison University, he shifted his mindset.
How so?
He wasn't aiming for some grand comeback, immediate stardom. Instead, he simply focused on getting his life in order. Just the basics.
And this is where the power of those small, consistent habits really started showing up for him, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Even though he started at the very bottom of the college baseball roster, maybe even just carrying water bottles,
Yeah.
he focused on these minor improvements. While his peers were staying up late, partying, he built good sleep habits. Made sure he got enough rest.
Simple, but important.
In the chaos of dorm life, he made a point to keep his room neat and tidy. Again, small things. But they gave him a sense of control. They started building his confidence back up.
And that confidence spilled over.
It did. This newfound belief then rippled into his academics. He ended up getting straight A's his first year.
Wow, okay.
And then the physical changes started compounding too. For the first time, he made it a habit to lift weights multiple times a week. Not trying to become a bodybuilder overnight, just consistency.
Right.
And he transformed his body, going from about 170 pounds to 200 pounds of lean muscle over time. It wasn't about radical diets or extreme workouts. It was just those small, consistent efforts adding up.
And his baseball career reflected this.
Absolutely. His athletic progression followed suit. From the bottom of the roster freshman to starting pitcher his sophomore year. By junior year, he was team captain and made the all-conference team.
That's a serious climb.
And then by his senior year, all those seemingly minor habits, accumulated over 4 years, paid off dramatically. 6 years after that horrific injury,
Yeah.
he was named the top male athlete at Denison University and selected for the ESPN Academic All-American team.
That's incredible. What a journey.
It really is.
Yeah.
And he concludes this part of his story by acknowledging, look, there was nothing legendary about his athletic career. He never went pro.
Right.
But he believes he accomplished something just as rare. He fulfilled his potential. And his core insight, the driving force behind the book, is that he did it not through some inherent amazing talent, but through the surprising compounding power of those tiny, consistent habits.
It's such a powerful testimony, isn't it? It makes this kind of change feel accessible to anyone, not just superstars.
Exactly. It's the why behind the whole book.
So, okay, We've grasped the incredible leverage of these tiny changes. We've seen it in British cycling and James Clear's own journey. Now, to really apply these ideas effectively, we need to pull back the curtain a bit and look at the actual wiring of our brains. How do habits really work, and how can we use that understanding to our advantage?
Yeah, this is crucial because understanding the mechanism gives you the levers to pull. Clear explains that all habits, good or bad, operate through a predictable four-step neurological feedback loop.
The habit loop.
The habit loop. He breaks it down into cue, craving, response, and reward.
Okay.
This isn't just some convenient model. It's the underlying mechanism of basically every recurring behavior we have.
And the key insight isn't just knowing the steps.
No, the key insight is understanding that if you can subtly influence any one of these four stages, even slightly, you hold the power to completely reprogram your behavior.
Okay, let's break that down. Starting with the first step, the cue.
Right, the cue. This is the trigger. It's the bit of information that signals a potential reward is coming. Our brains are constantly scanning our environment, both internal, like our thoughts and feelings, and external for these cues.
Like your phone buzzing.
Exactly. Or the smell of freshly baked cookies, or maybe the distinct sound of slot machines in a casino.
Mm-hmm.
What's fascinating, though, is that these cues are essentially meaningless until our thoughts and emotions interpret them.
What do you mean?
Well, for a compulsive gambler, that slot machine sound is a potent trigger. It kicks off the whole loop. But for someone who rarely gambles, or never has, it's just background noise. It doesn't signify anything important to their brain.
Ah, I see. The interpretation is key.
Precisely. Which leads us directly to the second step. The craving.
The motivation.
The motivational force behind every habit. And here's a really important distinction Clear makes.
Mm-hmm.
We don't actually crave the habit itself. We crave the change in state it delivers.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
You don't crave smoking a cigarette per se. You crave the feeling of relief or stress reduction it provides.
Right.
You're not inherently motivated by the act of brushing your teeth, but you are motivated by the feeling of having a clean mouth afterward.
Got it.
These surface cravings for relief, for cleanliness, for entertainment from TV are often just manifestations of deeper underlying human motives. Things like wanting to reduce uncertainty or win social approval or achieve status. The habits latch onto those fundamental drives.
Okay, so cue triggers it. Craving provides the motivation.
Yeah.
Then comes the response.
Step 3, the response. This is the actual action. The habit itself,
Yeah.
the physical or mental act you perform. It's the part we usually think of as the habit. Smoking the cigarette, brushing the teeth, turning on the TV.
The visible part.
The visible part. And finally, step 4, the reward.
The payoff.
The payoff. This is the satisfaction you get from performing the habit.
Ugh.
And the reward serves 2 crucial purposes. First, obviously, it satisfies the craving. It delivers that desired change in state. Second, and maybe even more important for long-term habit formation, it teaches your brain which actions are worth repeating in the future.
Ah, the learning mechanism.
Exactly. It's like what the early behaviorist psychologists like Thorndike with his puzzle boxes and cats observed. When a behavior gets a positive payoff, our brains learn to repeat it automatically. The more satisfying that reward is, the stronger the connection becomes, and the faster the habit forms.
So these 4 steps, cue, craving, response, reward, they form this endless loop, right? A continuous cycle.
An endless habit loop, exactly.
Yeah.
This cycle allows our brains to create automatic behaviors, making them efficient, requiring less conscious effort over time. But here's the thing. If any one of these steps is insufficient or missing, if the cue isn't noticed, or the craving isn't strong enough, or the response is too difficult, or the reward isn't satisfying, the behavior simply won't become an automatic habit.
That makes sense. It's like a chain, break one link and it falls apart.
Precisely. Which is why understanding each step gives you leverage.
It's interesting, though, because you hear people talk about habits as being restrictive, right? That routines somehow limit your freedom or spontaneity.
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
Yeah.
The idea that structure and routine pigeonhole you,
Yeah.
take away the vibrancy from life.
And Clear really pushes back against that idea, doesn't he? He argues the exact opposite.
He does. He argues that habits actually create freedom.
It sounds counterintuitive at first.
It does, but when you think about it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Think about people who don't have good financial habits. Are they free? Or are they constantly struggling for money, stressed about bills, limited in their choices?
Limited, definitely.
Or people without good health habits. They often lack energy, maybe face more physical limitations. That restricts freedom. Without good learning habits, you constantly feel behind the curve, unable to adapt. Those struggles restrict your freedom far more than a routine does.
So the idea is that by automating the fundamental tasks.
Yes. Things like financial planning, health routines, daily learning, even keeping your space tidy.
Mm-hmm.
By automating those, you free up significant mental space. Cognitive load is reduced.
So you're not constantly making decisions about the basics.
Exactly. That mental energy is then available for higher-level thinking, for genuinely creative pursuits, for being truly spontaneous when you want to be, not just reacting to chaos. It's about building a solid foundation so you can then build and explore without constant friction holding you back.
What's really fascinating here, I think, is how Clear moves beyond just looking at the actions and the outcomes. He introduces this concept of 3 layers of behavior change. He visualizes it like an onion.
Yes, the onion model. It's a great visual. The outermost layer is outcomes.
What you get.
What you get. This is where most people focus. Lose weight, publish a book, win a championship, make more money.
Right, the goals.
The goals. The next layer in is processes, what you do. This involves your habits and systems, implementing that new gym routine, decluttering your desk every day, developing a meditation practice, the actions.
Okay.
But the deepest, most crucial layer, the core of the onion, is identity.
What you believe.
What you believe. This includes your worldview, your self-image, your judgments about yourself and others, who you believe you are.
So the problem, he says, with focusing only on that outer layer, the outcome-based goals, is that it often leads to this yo-yo effect.
Exactly. Think about runners who train intensely for months for a marathon. What often happens right after they cross the finish line?
They stop running, or at least cut way back.
Right. Because the race, the outcome, was the only motivator. Once it was achieved, the driving force disappeared. Goals are great for setting direction, he argues, but they can actually be at odds with long-term progress, because once the goal is met, there's often no system left to sustain the behavior that got you there.
Plus, focusing only on winners creates survivorship bias, right? We ignore all the people who had the same goals but didn't succeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it restricts satisfaction. You're only happy if you hit the goal.
So the real power, according to Clear, lies in focusing on that deepest layer, identity-based habits.
Precisely. Instead of focusing primarily on what you want to get, the outcome, you start by focusing on who you wish to become, the identity.
It's a really profound shift in perspective from I'm the type of person who wants this.
It feels different, more ingrained.
It is. He tells a great little story about the entrepreneur Brian Clark, who struggled with biting his nails for years. Clark decided to stop, and through sheer willpower, he managed to grow his nails out a bit. But then he did something interesting. He got his first ever professional manicure.
Okay. Why?
Well, the manicurist commented on how healthy and attractive his nails looked, and suddenly Clark felt genuinely proud of his fingernails. He saw them differently.
His identity shifted. Exactly. From that moment on, he never bit them again. It wasn't the cost of the manicure that stopped him. It was that fundamental shift in his identity regarding nail care. His behavior changed almost effortlessly because his identity about his nails had changed. He now saw himself as someone with nice nails.
And that's the core idea, isn't it? What you do is ultimately a reflection of who you believe you are.
Yes. If you identify as being a voter, you're far more likely to actually go vote than someone who just says they want to vote. When your behavior and your identity are fully aligned, change feels almost effortless because you're simply acting in accordance with who you believe yourself to be. You're not fighting yourself.
So, okay, that sounds powerful, but how do you actually change your identity? It feels kind of fundamental.
It does, but Clear proposes a really practical, simple two-step process. First, you decide the type of person you want to be.
Okay.
This often means working backward from the outcomes you desire. So if you want to write a book, outcome, ask yourself, who is the type of person that could write a book?
Someone consistent, maybe. Reliable.
Yeah.
Disciplined.
Exactly. So your focus shifts from the outcome, write of the book, to cultivating the identity of being a consistent and reliable person.
Got it. That's step 1. What's step 2?
Step 2 is prove it to yourself with small wins.
Back to the small habits.
Back to the atomic habits. Every action you take is essentially a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Going to the gym, even for 5 minutes, is a vote for being a healthy person. Writing 1 sentence is a vote for being a writer. Meditating for 1 minute is a vote for being a calm person.
So no single vote transforms your beliefs overnight.
No, but as those votes build up day after day, so does the evidence for your new identity. You start to believe it because you have proof. This is why meaningful change doesn't require these radical, uncomfortable shifts. Small habits provide that continuous stream of evidence, building belief and trust in yourself over time.
He mentions a friend who lost over 100 pounds, right? How did she use this?
Yeah, her strategy was simple but profound. In moments of decision, she would consistently ask herself, what would a healthy person do? Would a healthy person take the stairs or the elevator? Order the salad or the fries, go for a walk or watch TV? And then she would act based on that identity,
Acting as if.
acting as the person she wanted to become until it became who she was.
So the biggest barrier to positive change, he argues, often comes when a good habit conflicts with your current self-image or maybe even your group identity.
Absolutely. It's incredibly hard to maintain a habit if it fundamentally contradicts who you believe yourself to be or who your social group expects you to be. This is why continuously editing your beliefs, being willing to upgrade and expand your identity, is so critical for true, lasting growth.
It really brings it back to that core idea. It's not about having something, it's about becoming someone.
Precisely. The habits are the path to becoming.
Okay, this is great foundational stuff. Now let's get into the real practical side. The 4 laws of behavior change. This feels like the core playbook, the actionable framework Clear offers.
It absolutely is. These 4 laws are designed to be a simple, memorable, and actionable framework to make good habits inevitable and bad habits basically impossible. And the beauty is they work with human nature, leveraging that habit loop we talked about, not fighting against it.
So it's a playbook for anyone looking to build better habits or break bad ones. Let's dive into the first law.
All right. The first law relates to the first step of the habit loop, the cue. The law is make it obvious for good habits.
Make the cue unmissable.
Exactly. And the first step towards making something obvious is often increasing your awareness. We perform so many habits non-consciously, automatically.
Like mindlessly scrolling or snacking.
Right. To overcome this habit blindness, Clear suggests simple tools like creating a habit scorecard. Just list your daily habits and mark them as positive, negative, or neutral. Just the act of observing makes you aware.
He also mentions that pointing and calling system from Japan.
Yeah, and their subway systems. Operators physically point at signals and call out commands like, signal is green. It seems redundant, but it transforms an unconscious action into a conscious one, dramatically increasing self-awareness and reducing errors. It forces observation.
So bringing that awareness to our own habits is step 1. What's next for making good habits obvious?
Building on that awareness, the next powerful strategy is using implementation intentions.
Okay, what's that?
It's a fancy term for a simple plan. I will behavior at time in location, or the format Clear often uses. When situation X arises, I will perform response Y.
So being really specific about when and where.
Extremely specific. Studies show that making a concrete plan like this significantly increases follow-through. People who wrote down the exact time and place they would get their flu shot were much more likely to actually get it. Same for things like voter turnout or even paying taxes on time. It removes the ambiguity and the need for in-the-moment decision-making.
That makes sense. It takes the guesswork out. And then there's habit stacking, which I really like.
Me too, it's very clever. The formula is simple. After I current habit, I will new habit.
Leveraging something you already do automatically.
Well, exactly. You identify a habit you already perform consistently each day, like brushing your teeth or making coffee or closing your laptop for lunch. Then you stack your desired new habit immediately after it.
Like Clear's push-up example.
Right. He initially just wanted to do more push-ups. Vague. He refined it using habit stacking and implementation intention. When I close my laptop for lunch, the cue, his current habit, I will do 10 push-ups next to my desk. The new habit, specific location. That high level of specificity makes the cue undeniable and links the new behavior to an existing routine.
And beyond planning, there's environment design. This seems huge.
It's massive. Our physical and social environment powerfully shapes our habits, often without us realizing it. Clear uses the example of the Massachusetts General Hospital cafeteria.
What did they do?
They simply changed the placement of drinks. They added water bottles to every drink station and put soda inside the main refrigerators instead of next to the registers. They didn't ban soda. They just made water more obvious and soda slightly less convenient.
And the result?
Soda sales dropped significantly and bottled water sales soared. People made healthier choices passively just because the environment nudged them.
Like the fly sticker in the urinals at Schiphol Airport.
Exactly. That little visual cue dramatically reduced spillage, as they delicately put it, simply by giving men something obvious to aim for. These examples show how making cues for desired behaviors visually obvious can dramatically alter behavior.
So for us, listening right now, it means consciously designing our space.
Yes. Put your medication right next to the faucet if you need to take it in the morning. Leave your guitar out in the living room, not hidden in the closet. Put fresh fruit in a bowl on the counter, not buried in the fridge drawer. Place water bottles all around your house or workspace. You're designing your world to make the cues for your desired actions unavoidable. Make the right choice, the easy, obvious choice.
It's also important to remember that context is cue, right? Habits get tied to the whole environment.
Absolutely. You might drink more socially than you do alone. You might only snack while sitting on a particular couch. Habits become associated not just with the single trigger, but with the entire context, the room, the time of day, the people around you.
Which is why changing habits can be easier in a new environment.
Often, yes. Clear cites the famous Vietnam War heroin addiction study. A surprisingly high number of U.S. soldiers became addicted to heroin while overseas. But contrary to expectations, when they returned home, about 90% of them simply stopped using without rehab because they were removed from the environment, filled with all the cues associated with their addiction. The stress of war, the easy availability, the social context. The cues were gone.
So if a totally new environment isn't possible, what can you do?
You can try to redefine or rearrange your existing environment. Clear recommends the one space, one use rule. Try not to work in your bedroom or relax on your work computer. Create distinct spaces for distinct activities. He talks about how he stopped working on the couch or kitchen table and created a dedicated office space, which helped him mentally switch off much better. You're trying to break the old contextual associations.
Okay, that covers making good habits obvious. Now what about the flip side? For bad habits.
For bad habits, you use the inversion of the first law. Make it invisible.
Hide the cues.
Hide the cues. Reduce exposure. Clear argues that self-control is generally a short-term strategy and often unreliable. We all have limited willpower.
Yeah, it feels like fighting a losing battle sometimes.
Right. So the more reliable long-term approach is to cut bad habits off at the source by reducing your exposure to the cues that trigger them in the first place. Out of sight, out of mind. Or at least less likely to trigger the craving.
So, practical examples.
Leave your phone in another room when you need to focus. Unfollow social media accounts that make you feel envious or angry. Move the TV out of the bedroom if you watch too late. Unplug the game console after each use and put it away. Hide unhealthy snacks in the back of the pantry, or just don't buy them.
It sounds simple, but removing that initial trigger can be powerful.
It really can. Clear points out that removing even a single cue can often make an entire bad habit fade away because that automatic trigger just isn't firing anymore. He also makes an interesting point about how bad habits can be autocatalytic, meaning they can foster the very feelings they are trying to numb. You feel bad, so you eat junk food, which makes you feel sluggish and guilty, so you feel worse, so you eat more junk food. Or you feel anxious, so you smoke, but smoking itself increases anxiety long term. The bad habit itself fuels the negative feeling you're trying to escape, creating a vicious cycle. Making the cue invisible helps break that cycle early.
Okay, that's law one, obviousness. Let's move on to the second law.
The second law tackles the second step of the habit loop, the craving. The law is, make it attractive for good habits.
Make it something you want to do.
Exactly. And this is fascinating because our brains are sort of pre-wired for certain kinds of attraction, often in ways that aren't entirely rational. Clear introduces the concept of supernormal stimuli.
Supernormal, like better than normal.
Better than normal, in a way that hijacks our instincts. He mentions Nico Tinbergen's experiments with seagulls. Baby gulls peck at a red dot on their parents' beak to get food. Tinbergen found they'd peck even more frantically at a stick with 3 red dots, or an even bigger, brighter red dot than their parent actually had.
So an exaggerated version was more attractive than the real thing.
Precisely. And humans are similarly prone to these exaggerated versions of reality. Think about junk food. It's often engineered to be more appealing than natural foods. Higher salt, sugar, fat combinations that rarely exist in nature. Add things like dynamic contrast, like the gooey cheese on a crispy pizza crust, and you've got a supernormal stimulus for our taste buds. Our brains are simply drawn to these heightened signals.
And the food industry knows this very well.
Oh, absolutely. And at the heart of this attractiveness is the neurotransmitter dopamine and the dopamine-driven feedback loop.
Right, dopamine pleasure.
Not exactly. Clear explains that dopamine isn't just released when we experience pleasure, but crucially, it's released in anticipation of pleasure.
Before the reward.
Yes. Gambling addicts get a dopamine spike before they place the bet, not necessarily after winning. Cocaine addicts get a spike when they see the powder before they even use it. This wanting system in our brain, driven by dopamine and anticipation, is actually far more extensive and powerful neurologically than the liking system, the part that experiences the pleasure itself.
So the desire is often stronger than the actual enjoyment?
Often, yes, that anticipation, that craving is incredibly motivating.
So how do we harness this anticipation for good habits, make them more attractive?
One really effective strategy, Clear suggests, is temptation bundling.
Okay, bundling, like putting things together.
Exactly. It's pairing an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Give me an example.
He shares the story of an engineering student in Ireland, Ronan Byrne, who loved watching Netflix but knew he should exercise more. So he literally hacked his stationary bike and connected it to his laptop. His computer would only play Netflix if he was pedaling at a certain minimum speed.
That's brilliant.
Isn't it? He bundled the temptation, watching Netflix, with the habit he needed to build, cycling. You make the necessary habit more attractive by linking it directly to something you already desire. You could bundle listening to your favorite podcast only while you go for a run, or getting a pedicure only while you process overdue emails.
Linking the want and the need, I like that. What else makes habits attractive?
Another huge factor is social norms. Humans are fundamentally social creatures, herd animals. We have this incredibly deep desire to belong, to fit in, to earn the approval and respect of our peers. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives, as Clear puts it.
So we copy others.
We do. We naturally imitate the habits of three specific groups. The close, family and friends. Think about how easily you pick up sayings or habits from people you spend time with. The many, the group norm. This relates to the famous Solomon Asch conformity experiments. And the powerful, those who have status and respect. We copy people we admire.
The Asch experiments, those are the ones with the lines, right? Where people agreed with obviously wrong answers.
That's them. About 75% of subjects agreed with an obviously incorrect group answer at least once, just because everyone else did. It shows the immense internal pressure we feel to comply with group norms, even when it overrides our own senses.
So surrounding ourselves with people who have the habits we want can make those habits more attractive.
Absolutely. If everyone in your social circle exercises regularly and eats healthy, those behaviors become the attractive norm. If your family values reading, you're more likely to find reading attractive. Clear revisits the story of the Polgar sisters, the chess prodigies.
Right, raised to be chess champions from birth.
Yes, and a key factor was their unique home culture. Their parents created an environment where chess was prioritized, celebrated, and rewarded. This intense focus made the hard work of practicing chess feel attractive and enjoyable to the sisters because it was the norm, and it earned them praise within their crucial social group, their family. Joining a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior is a powerful way to make it attractive.
Okay, social norms are powerful. What else?
Clear also suggests using motivation rituals. This is about creating a positive association before a difficult habit.
How does that work?
You do something you enjoy immediately before performing the habit you find difficult or unattractive. For example, maybe you listen to your favorite pump-up song right before you start a workout. Or you take a few deep, calming breaths and intentionally smile right before making a difficult phone call. The ritual acts as a cue that shifts your mindset and makes the upcoming task feel a bit more appealing. The author mentions his own pregame baseball ritual, a specific sequence of actions that reliably put him in a competitive and focused mental state, even if he wasn't feeling motivated beforehand.
Associating the hard thing with something positive.
Precisely.
Okay, so for making bad habits unattractive, we use the inversion again. Make it unattractive.
Exactly. This involves systematically reframing your mindset around the cues associated with the bad habit. Highlight the downsides, not the perceived benefits.
Like with smoking.
Right. Clear uses the example of Alan Carr's popular easy way to stop smoking method. A core part of that method is relentlessly arguing that smoking offers no genuine benefits whatsoever. It doesn't actually relieve stress. It causes it long-term. It doesn't help you concentrate. It doesn't make you look cool. By repeatedly reframing thoughts like a cigarette will calm me down to something like smoking destroys my nerves and gives me wrinkles, you make the habit seem utterly ridiculous and therefore unattractive.
So it's about changing the prediction your brain makes about the outcome.
Yes. Our behavior depends heavily on how we interpret events and the predictions we make about what will happen next. The same cue, seeing a cigarette, can spark an intense craving in one person, predicting relief, or a feeling of repulsion in another, predicting coughing and bad health, depending entirely on their learned associations and their current mindset. You can actively cultivate that unattractiveness by focusing on the negative consequences.
Okay, law 1, make it obvious. Law 2, make it attractive. What's law 3?
Law 3 addresses the third step in the loop, the response, the action itself. The law is, make it easy for good habits.
Reduce the effort involved.
Exactly. This law is built on a fundamental principle of human behavior, the law of least effort. Humans, like most animals, naturally gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of work. We are wired to conserve energy.
It's just efficient.
It's efficient. Clear uses Jared Diamond's explanation from Guns, Germs, and Steel about why agriculture spread more easily east-west across Eurasia than north-south in the Americas or Africa. Similar latitudes meant similar climates, day lengths, and seasons, requiring less effort to adapt crops and farming techniques compared to moving across vastly different climate zones. We naturally followed the path of least resistance.
So the strategy for building good habits is to reduce friction, make them as effortless as possible.
Precisely. Clear uses the analogy of trying to get water through a kinked garden hose. You can try to force more water through, like pumping up your motivation for a difficult habit, or you can simply remove the bend in the hose, make the habit easier.
Removing the bend is usually more effective long-term.
Far more effective. Trying to rely purely on motivation to power through difficult habits is exhausting. Instead, redesign the habit itself, or the environment around it, to make it require less activation energy. Make your habits so easy, you'll do them even when you don't feel like it.
We see this in successful products too, right?
Absolutely. Think about habit-forming products and services. Meal delivery kits remove the friction of planning and shopping. Dating apps remove the friction of approaching strangers. Ride-sharing apps remove the friction of finding parking or navigating. Voice-activated speakers remove the friction of typing. They all succeed, in part, by making the desired action incredibly easy.
Removing steps, reducing effort.
Yes. Another powerful tactic related to this is priming the environment. This is about preparing your space to make future actions easier.
Like resetting the room.
Exactly. Clear mentions Oswald Knuckles, an IT consultant who developed the habit of resetting rooms. When he finished watching TV, he'd put the remote back, arrange the pillows, fold the blanket. When he left his desk, he'd tidy it. This wasn't just about cleanliness. It was about priming the environment for the next action. A tidy living room is easier to relax in. A clear desk is easier to start working at.
So for building habits, this means setting things up in advance.
Yes. Lay out your workout clothes, shoes, and water bottle the night before. Put the ingredients for your healthy breakfast on the counter. Place your book and bookmark on your pillow. Set out your journal and pen on your nightstand. The goal is to make the starting point of your good habit the path of least resistance for your future self. You reduce the number of steps between you and the desired behavior.
And probably the most famous strategy from this law is the 2-minute rule.
Ah, yes, the 2-minute rule.
Ah.
It's incredibly simple but remarkably effective. The rule is, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do.
Less than 2 minutes. That seems too easy.
That's the point. You scale the habit down to its absolute easiest starting point. So, read before bed each night becomes read one page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Study for class becomes open my notes. Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes.
So it's about just starting.
It's about mastering the art of showing up. Clear emphasizes that a habit must be established before it can be improved. You can't optimize a habit that doesn't exist. The 2-minute rule makes it almost impossible not to start. It lowers the barrier so much that you just do it.
You build the consistency first, then worry about intensity or duration later. Standardize before you optimize.
Exactly. He shares that story of a reader who lost over 100 pounds. His initial habit wasn't go to the gym for an hour. It was go to the gym for 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes, 3 days a week. He figured he could always do 5 minutes. After a few weeks, he started thinking, well, I'm already here. Might as well stay a bit longer. But the key was mastering the habit of showing up consistently, using that 2-minute or 5-minute version. The secret is to always stay below the point where the habit feels like a chore, especially at the beginning. It's better to do less than you hoped than to do nothing at all because you felt overwhelmed.
That makes a lot of sense. Build the root first.
Okay.
So for bad habits, the inversion is make it difficult.
Yes. Increase the friction. Make the undesirable action as impractical or effortful as possible.
How do you do that?
One powerful way is by using commitment devices. These are choices you make in the present that lock in better behavior for your future self. usually by making bad habits harder to perform.
But
Buying snacks in small, individual packages instead of a giant bag increases the friction of overeating. You have to consciously open another package. Using software to block distracting websites during work hours. Setting an outlet timer to automatically cut off your Wi-Fi router at 10 p.m. every night makes it harder to mindlessly browse late into the night. You're essentially creating obstacles for your future, less disciplined self.
you're protecting yourself from yourself,
In a way, yes. And sometimes you can even automate the impossible,
making the bad habit literally impossible.
or close to it. Clear mentions John Henry Patterson, the inventor of the modern cash register. Before registers, employee theft from the till was rampant. The register didn't just track sales, it made stealing much, much harder, effectively automating more ethical behavior by increasing the difficulty and risk immensely.
So applying that to ourselves.
Clear provides a great list of one-time actions that lock in good habits or make bad ones harder. Things like buying a high-quality water filter makes drinking water easier. Getting blackout curtains makes sleeping easier. Setting up automatic savings transfers makes saving effortless. Deleting distracting apps or turning off notifications permanently. These require a bit of upfront effort, but create lasting value by automating good choices or making bad ones difficult.
He also shared his own social media experiment, didn't he?
Yes. While writing the book, he struggled with checking social media too often. So he had his assistant change his passwords every Monday morning and only give them back to him on Friday.
Wow, that's extreme friction.
Extreme friction. It made logging in during the work week practically impossible. And
Okay.
what did he discover? He didn't actually need it nearly as much as he thought. When the bad habit became incredibly difficult, his motivation naturally shifted towards more meaningful work. Automation, or making something incredibly difficult, is the ultimate way to lock in future behavior without relying on fickle willpower.
Okay, that brings us to the fourth and final law. We've made it obvious, attractive, and easy. What's next?
The fourth law closes the habit loop by addressing the reward. The law is, make it satisfying for good habits.
The reward needs to feel good.
It needs to feel good, and crucially, it often needs to feel good immediately. This law is rooted in what Clear calls the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided.
Immediately rewarded. That seems key.
It is key, and it highlights a major challenge in modern life, the dilemma of delayed returns.
What does he mean by that?
Our modern society largely operates as a delayed return environment. You work hard today, but you get your paycheck in weeks or months. You exercise today, but the health benefits might not show up for months or years. You save money today for retirement decades away.
Right, the payoff is far off.
Exactly. But our brains, Clear argues, evolved in an immediate return environment. For our hunter-gatherer ancestors, most choices had immediate consequences. Find berries, eat now. See predator, run now. The feedback loop was tight.
So our brains are still wired for that immediate gratification.
Largely, yes. This creates what economists call time inconsistency. We value present rewards much more highly than future rewards, even if the future rewards are objectively better. This is why immediate gratification often wins out over long-term well-being.
It explains why people smoke or overeat or procrastinate, even when they know the long-term consequences are bad. The immediate outcome feels good or avoids discomfort, while the bad outcomes are delayed.
Precisely. The costs of good habits, effort, sacrifice, are often felt in the present, while their rewards are in the future. The rewards of bad habits, pleasure, relief, are often in the present, while their costs are in the future. Our brain naturally prioritizes the present.
So to build good habits that stick, we need to find a way to make them immediately satisfying. Work with that wiring.
Exactly. You need to add some form of immediate pleasure or satisfaction to habits that primarily offer long-term benefits. Find a way to feel successful right away.
How can you do that for something like, say, exercising or saving money?
Clear gives a brilliant example from public health worker Stephen Luby in Karachi, Pakistan. They were trying to improve hand-washing habits to reduce disease. Just telling people wasn't working well.
So what did they do?
They partnered with Procter & Gamble to distribute Safeguard soap. Crucially, Safeguard was engineered to foam up very easily and had a pleasant smell. It felt good to use.
It made the act itself immediately more pleasant.
Yes. Hand washing went from a chore to a slightly more enjoyable experience. And the results? Significant reductions in diseases like diarrhea and pneumonia. And importantly, the improved habits persisted for years, even after the free, nice-smelling soap was no longer provided. The key was creating that strong, positive sensory signal. an immediate reward.
So find a way to make the process itself feel good immediately. What about tracking progress? Does that help?
Hugely. Visual measurement and habit tracking are incredibly powerful ways to make habits immediately satisfying. Clear shares the story of Trent Deersmead, a rookie stockbroker.
The paperclip guy.
The paperclip guy. Each morning, he'd put 120 paperclips in one jar. After each sales call he made, he'd move one paperclip to a second, empty jar. He didn't focus on closing deals initially. He focused on the satisfying act of moving the paperclips. That visual evidence of progress provided immediate satisfaction and kept him making calls.
So habit trackers work the same way, like marking an X on a calendar.
Exactly. Simple tools like a calendar where you mark off each day you complete your habit, or a food journal or a workout log, are incredibly effective. Benjamin Franklin famously tracked his 13 virtues this way. Jerry Seinfeld uses the "don't break the chain" method for writing jokes every day, marking a big red X on a calendar.
Why is tracking so effective?
Clear details 3 key benefits. 1, it makes the habit voice. Obvious, the tracker itself is a visual cue. It reminds you to act, and it keeps you honest about your actual behavior. 2, it's attractive. Seeing your progress, seeing the chain of X's grow, is inherently motivating. It feeds your desire to keep going. And 3, and most relevant here, it's immediately satisfying. It feels good to cross off an item, to log a workout, to watch your results accumulate visually. It provides immediate reinforcement and also reinforces your desired identity. You're literally casting votes for the type of person you wish to become and seeing the evidence pile up.
That makes sense. But what happens when you inevitably slip up? Everyone misses a day sometimes. Does that break the whole thing?
That's a crucial point. Perfection is impossible, and Clear emphasizes recovering quickly with the simple but powerful rule: never miss twice.
Never miss twice.
The first mistake doesn't ruin you. It's the spiral of repeated mistakes that follows that does the damage. One missed workout is an outlier. 2 in a row feels like the start of a new negative trend. So the rule is, if you miss one day, make it your absolute priority to get back on track the very next day, or as quickly as possible.
It's about stopping the slide.
Exactly. Showing up even on the bad days, the busy days, the days you don't feel like it, even if you only do the 2-minute version, is critical. It maintains the compounding gains, but maybe more importantly, it reaffirms your identity. You're still the type of person who shows up even when it's hard. It's about not putting up a 0 day and protecting your compounding progress.
Okay, good habits immediately satisfying. So for bad habits, the inversion must be make it unsatisfying.
Precisely. And ideally, make it immediately unsatisfying. Add some form of immediate pain or cost to the undesirable action.
Immediate pain sounds harsh.
It can be, but it's effective because, again, our brains learn faster from immediate consequences. Clear shares Roger Fisher's provocative, hypothetical proposal during the Cold War to deter nuclear war.
What was it?
Fisher suggested putting the nuclear launch codes inside a small capsule implanted next to the heart of a volunteer aide who would always accompany the president. If the president ever wanted to launch the nukes, he would first have to personally kill the aide with a butcher knife to retrieve the codes.
Oh my God, that's graphic.
Extremely graphic and obviously controversial, but it powerfully illustrates the principle. Making the consequence immediate, visceral, and costly forces a much deeper consideration of the action. A plumber who messes up faces an immediate angry call. A surgeon faces an immediate potential lawsuit. Immediate consequences teach faster than delayed ones.
So how do we apply that to our own bad habits without, needing a butcher knife?
A much more practical and less gruesome way is using a habit contract.
A contract with yourself.
A contract with yourself, ideally made public or shared with others. It's a verbal or written agreement where you state your commitment to a particular habit or avoiding a bad habit, and, crucially, you specify the punishment that will occur if you fail.
Punishment? Like what?
It needs to be something genuinely undesirable to you. Then, you get 1 or 2 accountability partners, friends, family, a coach, to witness the contract and hold you to it.
He gives an example of this, right? Brian Harris.
Yeah, Brian Harris, an entrepreneur who wanted to lose weight. He created a detailed contract with his wife and his personal trainer as accountability partners. It specified his goals: track food daily, weigh himself, exercise, and the consequences for failure were specific and painful to him. If he failed to track food, he had to pay his trainer $100. If he failed to weigh himself, he had to pay his wife $500.
Yeah.
If he failed his workout goal, he had to dress up in a full suit and tie every single day for the next week, including Sunday.
Wow. That's motivating. Because it's public and painful.
Exactly. Making the costs public and personally painful makes the bad habit immediately unsatisfying and much harder to rationalize or maintain. You could even automate accountability. Clear mentions Thomas Frank, another entrepreneur, who set up an automated tweet. If he didn't disable it by waking up at 6:10 a.m., it would automatically tweet out, "It's 6:10 and I'm not up because I'm lazy. Reply to this for $5 via PayPal."
Haha, that's commitment, using social shame and financial cost.
Right. The habit contract leverages our strong desire to look good and be consistent in the eyes of others. Just knowing someone is watching, someone might find out if you slip up, significantly increases motivation and reduces the likelihood of procrastination or giving in to the bad habit. It makes the consequence immediate and social.
Okay, those are the 4 laws. Obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. That's a really solid framework. But Clear doesn't quite stop there, does he? He gets into some more advanced tactics.
He does. He goes beyond the basics to explore how to optimize further, how to go from just good habits to maybe even achieving mastery in an area. And he starts by tackling the often tricky subject of talent and genes.
The nature versus nurture debate, habit style. Does talent matter?
Clear's take is nuanced. He argues that yes, genes matter. They don't determine your destiny, absolutely not. But they do influence your areas of opportunity. They highlight where you might have a natural advantage.
How so?
He uses the classic examples of elite athletes. Michael Phelps, with his incredibly long torso, huge wingspan, and large feet almost perfectly built for swimming, versus Hicham El Guerrouj, a multiple Olympic champion middle-distance runner who was relatively short and incredibly light, an ideal physique for running. Put Phelps in a marathon or El Guerrouj in a pool, and they likely wouldn't be world champions.
So their natural inclinations made building the necessary habits easier and more satisfying for them in their chosen sport.
Exactly. Habits are easier when they align with your natural abilities. The key insight here is that competence is highly context-dependent. Success isn't just about working hard. It's often about choosing the right field of competition where your natural strengths give you an edge. You want to play a game where the odds are in your favor.
So this extends beyond physical traits to our personality, too.
Absolutely. Clear references the big 5 personality traits, things like openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These traits have biological underpinnings and influence what kind of activities we naturally find engaging or draining.
So the takeaway is to build habits that fit your personality.
Yes. Shape your habits around your genuine interests and natural preferences, not just based on what's popular or what someone else says you should do. If you're an introvert, maybe a quiet solo run is a better exercise habit for you than a loud group fitness class, even if that class is trendy. Find the version of a habit that brings you joy and feels authentic, because habits need to be enjoyable on some level if they're going to stick long term.
So how do you figure out where your natural advantages lie? How do you find that game where the odds are in your favor?
Clear suggests a few things. One is understanding the explore-exploit trade-off. In the beginning of any new endeavor, career, hobby, relationship, it often pays to explore many different options. Try things out, see what clicks. But once you find something that works well, that yields good results for you, you should shift to exploiting that option, doubling down on it. Google famously used this with their 80-20 rule. 80% work on the main job, 20% explore passion projects, some of which turned into major products.
So explore first, then focus. He also offers some self-reflection questions, right?
Yes, these are great prompts to help you identify your natural strengths.
What feels like fun to me but work to others? This points to activities where you can handle the inherent difficulties or pain more easily than most.
What makes me lose track of time?
Yeah.
This identifies your potential flow states, where tasks are inherently engaging and satisfying for you.
Where do I get greater returns than the average person? This helps pinpoint areas where your natural aptitude gives you a comparative advantage.
What comes naturally to me? This encourages you to ignore external expectations and focus on what feels authentic and effortless for you.
Those are powerful questions. He also suggests winning by being different, not just better.
Right. If you can't realistically be the absolute best in a crowded field, maybe you can carve out a unique niche by combining your skills in an unusual way. He gives his own example of creating his college major in biomechanics, merging physics, chemistry, biology, and anatomy. This reduced direct competition and played to his unique combination of interests. Find ways to blend your skills to create a unique advantage.
So ultimately, genes don't replace hard work.
Not at all. Genes don't eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify what to work hard on. Understanding your natural inclinations helps you focus your effort where it's likely to be most effective and satisfying, helping you fulfill your own potential rather than constantly comparing yourself to others whose genetic deck might be stacked differently.
That's a really healthy perspective. Okay, so you found your game, you're leveraging your strength. How do you stay motivated over the long haul? This leads to the Goldilocks rule, right?
Exactly. The Goldilocks rule addresses how to maintain motivation, especially when things get tough, or maybe even more commonly, when they get boring. The rule states that humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities, tasks of just manageable difficulty.
Not too hard, not too easy, but just right.
Just right. This connects to the well-known Yerkes-Dodson law in psychology, which shows that performance peaks at an optimal level of arousal or challenge. If a task is too easy, we get bored. If it's too hard, we get anxious and overwhelmed. The sweet spot is that zone where it's challenging enough to be engaging, but not so difficult that it feels hopeless.
He uses Steve Martin's comedy career as an example.
A perfect example. Martin spent roughly 18 years honing his craft before achieving overnight success. He didn't just stick to the same routine. Each year, he'd gradually expand his act by just a minute or two, constantly adding new, challenging material. But he also kept some jokes that were guaranteed laughs. This balance, pushing the edge slightly while ensuring some success, kept him working hard and staying within that Goldilocks zone of optimal challenge.
And when you're in that zone, that's when you can hit a flow state.
Often, yes. Flow often occurs when a task is roughly 4% beyond your current skill level. It demands full concentration, blending automatic skills with effortful focus, leading to that feeling of being completely immersed, losing track of time, and performing at your peak. It's deeply satisfying.
But here's the catch, Clear points out. The greatest threat to long-term success isn't usually failure, it's boredom.
Yes. As habits become automatic, as you master the basics, they inevitably become less interesting. They lose their novelty, and sometimes their satisfaction wanes. This is often when we get tempted to jump to a new strategy or quit. Even if the current habit is still effective, we just get bored with the routine.
This is why things like video games or social media can be so addictive, right? They use variable rewards.
Exactly. Variable rewards like the unpredictable payoffs from a slot machine or the constantly changing feed on social media or the unexpected loot drops in a video game are incredibly effective at keeping us hooked. The unpredictability causes the biggest dopamine spikes and accelerates habit formation because you never know when the next reward is coming. Good habits often lack this built-in novelty.
So how do you push through the boredom that inevitably comes with mastering the basics of any skill?
This is where clear distinguishes between professionals and amateurs. Amateurs only practice when they feel motivated or inspired. Professionals stick to the schedule, they show up and put in the reps, even when it's annoying or painful or draining, as he says. They don't let their mood dictate their actions. They understand that consistency, even through boredom, is the key to long-term progress. They find a way to fall in love with the process, not just the outcome.
Showing up even when you don't feel like it, that seems to be a recurring theme.
It's fundamental.
Okay, so we're working in the Goldilocks zone, we're pushing through boredom, but there's actually a potential downside to good habits becoming automatic.
There is, and this leads to the final advanced tactic, understanding the downside of good habits and the true path to mastery. The main downside is complacency. As habits become automatic and require less conscious thought, we can become less sensitive to feedback. We stop paying close attention, we might overlook small errors that creep in, and we can mistakenly assume we're still improving just because we're gaining experience. In reality, we might just be reinforcing our current habits' flaws and all, rather than actively refining them. Experience doesn't automatically equal expertise.
So just doing something for a long time doesn't guarantee you get better at it.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
You could practice the guitar for years but still make the same mistakes if you're not consciously working to improve.
So mastery isn't just about making things automatic.
No, mastery isn't a destination you reach where everything is effortless. It's a continuous cycle. It involves making certain fundamental skills automatic, yes, building that foundation. But then you need to use the mental space freed up by those automatic habits to layer on new challenges, focus on the next level of detail, and consciously refine your performance. Each mastered habit unlocks the next level of performance you need to focus on. It's an endless process of building, refining, and challenging yourself.
So how do you avoid that complacency trap? How do you ensure you're actually improving and not just repeating?
The antidote, Clear argues, is building in a system for regular reflection and review. You need to consciously take time to look at your performance, analyze your results, identify mistakes, and adjust your approach. This prevents that gradual slide into mediocrity and keeps you aware of where you can improve.
He mentions Pat Riley, the basketball coach.
Yes, the legendary coach of the Los Angeles Lakers in the 80s. He implemented his Career Best Effort, CBE program. They meticulously tracked key stats for each player, going back to their high school performance. Then, they challenged each player to improve their output by just 1% over the course of the season compared to their previous best. They even tracked unsung hero stats, like diving for loose balls. This systematic, data-driven review process kept everyone focused on marginal gains and is credited with helping the Lakers win back-to-back NBA championships.
So elite performers constantly review their process.
Consistently. Think of Eliud Kipchoge, the marathoner, meticulously reviewing his training notes after every single practice to find tiny areas for improvement. Or swimmer Katie Ledecky tracking every aspect of her wellness and training. Or even comedian Chris Rock rigorously testing and refining every single joke based on audience reactions across hundreds of small club performances before a big special. They don't just rely on talent. They rely on reflection and refinement.
And Clear applies this personally, too.
Yes, he shares his own system. He performs an annual review at the end of each year asking, what went well this year? What didn't go so well? What did I learn? He also conducts a regular integrity report where he revisits his core values and asks, am I living with integrity? Am I being the person I want to be? This helps him hold himself accountable and consciously set higher standards for the future. These regular periods of self-awareness and deliberate adjustment are vital for sustained growth and avoiding complacency.
He also makes a point about keeping your identity small. What does that mean?
It means not clinging too tightly to one specific version of your identity. Example, I am a CEO, I am a marathon runner, I am a vegan. While identity is key for habit change, becoming overly attached to one label can actually hinder growth. If circumstances change or you need to evolve, a rigid identity creates identity conflict and makes it harder to adapt or unlearn old ways.
So, be willing to update your beliefs about yourself.
Exactly. The ability to unlearn, to continuously edit your beliefs and expand your identity is crucial for becoming your best self over the long run. Don't let your identity become a cage.
And this all comes back to that core paradox of small changes, doesn't it?
It really does. Can one tiny change, one atomic habit, transform your life? Probably not on its own. But as Clear asks, what about the next one and the one after that? At some point, as these small improvements compound, you have to admit that your life was transformed by that series of tiny changes. Success isn't really a goal to reach or a finish line to cross. It's a system to continuously improve, an endless process of refinement driven by those atomic habits.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. As we've gone through this deep dive into James Clear's Atomic Habits, the core message seems incredibly powerful and actually quite hopeful.
I agree. It fundamentally shifts our perspective on what it takes to change. It reveals the truly profound impact of those tiny, seemingly insignificant habits, showing how they compound over time, like interest, to create extraordinary results.
And by understanding that four-step habit loop, the cue, the craving, the response, the reward, you gain this powerful insight into how all behaviors work, good and bad. It demystifies the process.
Absolutely. And then, with the 4 laws of behavior change, you have this incredibly practical, actionable framework. It's like an instruction manual for engineering your environment and designing a system for consistent growth.
Whether a habit feels hard to remember,
Make it obvious.
or it feels unappealing and like a chore,
Make it attractive.
or it just seems too difficult to even start,
Make it easy, especially with the 2-minute rule.
or you just can't seem to stick with it because the payoff feels too far away.
Make it immediately satisfying, often through tracking or adding a small reward. Clear provides clear strategies to overcome all those common barriers by working with our human nature, not constantly fighting against it.
It really emphasizes that it's not about forcing change through sheer willpower, which often fails us. It's about intelligently designing your world, your routines, so that good habits become almost inevitable and bad habits become impractical or invisible.
Precisely. Because ultimately, as Clear argues so convincingly, habits are not really about having something achieving a specific outcome. They are about becoming someone. The true, deeper purpose of building better habits is identity transformation.
That feels like the biggest takeaway. It shifts the focus entirely.
It does. And here's maybe a final thought, something to really mull over, drawing from Clear's insights on craving and satisfaction. He suggests that happiness, in a profound sense, might actually occur when you don't immediately turn your observations into problems that need fixing.
Explain that a bit more.
Our craving, that second step in the habit loop, is fundamentally about wanting to change our current state, wanting to fix something, alleviate discomfort, achieve satisfaction, but clear hints that a certain kind of peace can occur when you simply observe your feelings or your situation without that immediate, urgent need to alter it, without letting the observation instantly become a problem demanding a solution.
So accepting the present moment more without constantly craving something different?
Perhaps it relates to expectations, too. He notes that our satisfaction often depends on whether the liking of an outcome meets or exceeds our prior wanting or craving for it. If your liking falls short of your wanting, you feel dissatisfied.
Which explains why the pain of failure often correlates directly to the height of our expectations. It's why people sometimes say, I don't want to get my hopes up. They're trying to manage the potential gap between wanting and liking.
Exactly. But maybe the deeper insight here is that when you shift your focus from solely achieving outcomes to embracing the process of becoming, to consistently casting those small votes for your desired identity through your atomic habits, you can cultivate a different kind of fulfillment. A fulfillment that's less dependent on the fluctuating highs and lows of external results and more rooted in the ongoing, satisfying act of growth itself. Perhaps the deepest reward isn't reaching the destination, but rather the journey of becoming.
Thanks for tuning in to the Book Summary Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, hit that like button, subscribe for more summaries, and share it with someone who's ready to grow. Want deeper insights, exclusive book notes, and reading tips? Join our free newsletter. The link's in the description. And don't forget, if you'd like to read the full book, our affiliate link is right below. It helps support the channel and keeps the summaries coming. Until next time, keep reading, keep growing.